the most beautiful moment ever recorded of Carl and Annie Marie Park. A couple with an unlimited passion for exploration had experienced moments of happiness on countless challenging journeys. A strong love for the sea inspired the couple to realize their dream of sailing around the world. However, fate cruelly led them to a tragic end on the very vast ocean they loved. So what happened? How did Carl and Annie Marie Park pay the price for their own passion? Join Con Ha in uncovering the mystery of the tragic story aboard the yacht Escape, the couple who perished at sea. And as usual, before getting into the main content, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to support our future endeavors. Thank you all. The couple Carl and Annie Marie Park had been together for 19 years. Both shared a love for exploration, challenges, and a burning passion for the sea. Therefore, their wedding was held on a beautiful beach in Maris. In 2016, the couple made a bold decision to quit their stable jobs in Cologne, Germany, to fulfill their dream of sailing around the world. Although friends and family thought it was a crazy idea, Carl and Annie Marie were determined to pursue their passion. They invested their capital in a luxury yacht Escape CNB 66, a masterpiece worth nearly $2 million, 20.6 meters long and 5.5 meters wide. Designing a ship for this dream was not without difficulties. The architect Philippe Brandbounet, responsible for designing the yacht Escape, faced many obstacles in finding optimal solutions for issues related to ship operation. One of the most challenging problems was storing the mainsail. On smaller yachts, folding the mainsail in a zigzag pattern and tying it to the boom is a relatively simple operation. However, given the enormous size and weight of the mainsail on the Escape yacht, performing this operation manually was impossible. The architect of the luxury CND 66 considered a furling boom and mast. This solution allows the mainsail to be easily furled, even when the ship is sailing out. However, integrating a furling system would make the mast larger and heavier, while the boom was already too small, not ideal for a large yacht. Therefore, Bonnet decided to use a furling boom with a mechanism to roll the mainsail inside. But using a furling boom meant increasing the system's weight and requiring more complex technical operations. When Carl and Annie Marie furled the sail, they would have to point the bow into the wind to reduce pressure on the mainsail, making it easier to roll up. This step was not a major issue for the couple. In fact, adjusting the direction is an essential part of ship navigation. The space on the Escape yacht was scientifically designed to easily meet the needs of both. While Annie Marie enjoyed relaxing moments in the common living area, Carl spent most of his time in the cockpit steering the ship. After 3 long years of planning and building the ship with dedication, Carl and Annie Marie launched and christened Escape with the traditional ceremony of breaking a champagne bottle in March 2019. From then on, the couple began their journey to conquer the seas. They sailed to Diego, Guadalupe, around the Caribbean Sea, and finally docked in Bermuda 3 years later, in June 2022. Just a few days later, the couple Frank and Annie Marie decided to depart from Bermuda toward Nova Scotia. Earlier, at a boat exhibition in 2021, the couple met 2 experienced sailors and decided to invite them on this trip. To anticipate their identities and conveniently follow the story, I will call them John and Mike. John, a captain licensed by the U.S. Coast Guard with many years of ocean crossing experience, would take on the role of first mate. As for Mike, with extensive maritime experience, he would support the trip as the third mate. While showing John and Mike around the Escape, Cobb pointed out areas he considered unsafe. One of the main concerns, and something Cobb particularly noted, was the mainsheet attachment point near the dual steering stations. Simply put, this is the part connecting the boom to the control system, responsible for tightening or furling the mainsail. Cobb carefully explained that, due to the yacht's special design, the mainsail, when furled into the boom, would be heavier than usual, putting significant pressure on the connecting line. After thorough guidance, both John and Mike seemed very satisfied and ready for the trip. On June 9th, Escape officially weighed anchor in Bermuda and departed as planned. Since John and Mike were unfamiliar with the ship, Cobb assigned them to learn to steer. Assigning a fixed position to new members is the best practice until they become familiar with the ship's details. Additionally, Anne-Marie would manage the mainsheet, while Ka would handle more complex operations and give instructions to the entire crew. That day was a beautiful day, with wind blowing at a speed of 28 kilometers per hour. After leaving the port, they began hoisting the mainsail and unfurling the jib at the front of the yacht. From the back, Anne-Marie performed the operation of releasing the mainsheet to let the sail catch the wind. Since this was the first time John and Mike were accompanying Escape, they took turns steering the ship for a few hours on the first day to get familiar with the control system. Thanks to favorable wind conditions, it covered nearly 371 kilometers in the first 24 hours. As night fell, Ka took over the watch. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind unexpectedly hit, forcing him to immediately order everyone on deck to reef the sails. This was their first time performing this maneuver together, so the atmosphere was quite tense. In the strong wind, heavy rain poured down around them. First mate John took charge of steering the helm. Anne-Marie was responsible for pulling the mainsheet to the cockpit, then went up the mast and returned with the electric winch. She had to simultaneously perform two actions, releasing the preventer and reefing the mainsail. Meanwhile, Ka moved toward the bow to operate the electric winch installed at the base of the mast. A few hours later, they decided to reef the sails a second time as the wind speed stabilized at 46 kilometers per hour. To perform this maneuver safely, John turned the boat into the wind to reduce pressure on the mainsail. This allowed the sail to lie amidships while the wind blew evenly on both sides, balancing the pressure on the furling system and helping it operate smoothly. Throughout the process, John and Mike took turns steering the boat, while Emery controlled the mainsheet to bring the sail to the center position. Thanks to their seamless cooperation, after reefing the sails several times during the first night of the incident, Joan and Mike became more confident and could assist in unfurling the sails and hoisting them fully. The dawn breaking lifted the crew's spirits higher than ever. In the next 24 hours, the weather stabilized with wind speeds ranging from 19 to 34 kilometers per hour. Although the sails were set, they decided to start the engine as well to aid movement. Meanwhile, Hall went below deck to check the latest weather updates. Everything went quite smoothly. After 2.5 days, Escape was even ahead of schedule. The weather report indicated that around midnight or a bit after 1 a.m., the wind intensity would drop to 22 kilometers per hour and continue decreasing throughout the night. After sunset, the chief mate took over the watch from 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. During this time, Escape sailed at 17 kilometers per hour, under the influence of steady winds from 33 to 37 kilometers per hour. At the same time, Hall went below deck to rest in preparation for his next watch from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. While resting, Ka was suddenly awakened by Anne-Marie's anxious voice. The captain had only been below for an hour, yet everything had changed rapidly. Escape was heeling over. The wind intensity had increased significantly, reaching 46 kilometers per hour with gusts up to 57 kilometers per hour. First mate Mike was at the helm, doing his utmost to control the vessel. The crew struggled against the fierce wind for 2 consecutive hours, but by around midnight, they had successfully brought Escape back to stable sailing. Feeling relieved, Carl returned to his cabin to continue sleeping, but that sleep did not last long. Only half an hour later, Anne-Marie woke Ka again, and this time the situation was even more serious than before. They had encountered an unexpected storm 648 kilometers off the coast of Vietnam from Damascus. The wind had strengthened to 65 kilometers per hour, accompanied by strong gusts and waves nearly 6 meters high. Escape was facing a terrifying scene, with heavy rain pouring down over the entire deck. The situation became critical as the yacht heeled heavily to one side under the force of wind and waves. Recognizing the severity, Hall signaled Trome to steer Escape into the wind. However, 8-meter waves continued to crash onto the deck, causing the yacht to pitch violently, creating a chaotic scene. Ka began reefing the jib at the bow before furling the mainsail. At the same time, Anne-Marie prepared to pull the mainsheet to bring the boom to the center position. But something unexpected happened. While crossing a large wave, the boom suddenly went out of control and swung violently between the mainsheet and preventer, threatening the safety of the entire crew. In a critical situation, Ka continuously shouted commands in German. Due to the language barrier, mates Trone and Mai struggled to understand the instructions clearly. Without time to explain, Kyle hurriedly left the boat cabin and rushed to the Anne-Marie slope. The escape yacht rocked violently under the impact of storm, while the boom was still spinning uncontrollably. Fortunately, the preventer line remained tightly secured, helping to slow the boom and prevent it from swinging fully to the other side. Thus, the four temporarily avoided a horrific tragedy. The danger was not over as the main sheet, already loose, continuously slammed hard against surrounding objects under the wind's force. And then the unexpected happened. It hit Anne-Marie, knocking her down. Mike loudly called Ka to help Anne-Marie, while the boom continued to swing violently, creating an extremely chaotic scene. The mate continued shouting to Ka that the boom was reversing direction, but it was too late. In an instant, the main sheet struck Ka hard, knocking him down onto the ship's hull. Ka's left leg hit a seat in the cockpit, crushing his knee and causing continuous bleeding. A truly horrifying scene. In less than 10 seconds, both Ka and Anne-Marie were severely injured. And the disaster did not stop there. The preventer line broke, causing the swinging boom to slam into the ship's hull, dragging the main sheet. Losing both restraining lines left the boom completely free, spinning wildly. Amid the chaos, the third mate, Mike, quickly rushed to pull Anne-Marie away from the danger zone. While the poor main sheet was still lashing violently above their heads, at that moment, she was completely unconscious. Mike brought Anne-Marie into the cockpit and laid her on her back to administer first aid. Afterward, he had to simultaneously turn to care for Ka, using the shirt strap as a tourniquet to stop the bleeding, fighting to save the captain's life. John, the second mate, quickly rushed below deck to fetch the medical kit and the emergency distress beacon EPIRB. There, he sent a Mayday emergency message via radio to call for help but received no response. Not giving up, Mike gave Ka the satellite phone to make an emergency call. While John continued trying to communicate via VHF, Ka gritted his teeth, enduring the tormenting pain in his leg while dialing the emergency. Finally, their efforts paid off. Around 3:15, the crew managed to contact rescue stations in Germany, Halifax, and Boston. They requested immediate medical evacuation for the injured crew and established a schedule for updating the latest situation. However, the situation on board remained extremely critical. The escape was still out of control, the sails flapping wildly in the wind, and the boom continued to swing chaotically. To stabilize the situation, Mate John decided to steer the boat downwind to keep the boom fixed, preventing it from swinging violently and endangering the entire. Meanwhile, Mate Mike cared for Ka and Anne-Marie. To assist Mike, John activated the autopilot, allowing the boat to maintain its course for a short while. He crawled to the starboard side and attempted to furl the jib sail at the front of the boat. But unfortunately, it was torn in several places from being violently whipped during the storm. Suddenly, a large wave struck, causing the escape to roll and resulting in an uncontrolled change of direction. The boom once again swept across the cockpit, making the situation even more dangerous. Despite this, John calmly returned to take over the helm and steer the boat downwind for nearly 3 hours. Feeling slightly more at ease, he reactivated the autopilot to help Mike care for Ka and Anne-Marie, who were severely injured. At this point, the escape was about 741 kilometers from land and moving at a speed of 19 kilometers per hour. Despite the extremely harsh weather conditions, the third mate, Mike, still tried to maintain regular contact with the U.S. Coast Guard and the Canadian Coast Guard in Halifax via satellite phone. However, a more difficult problem arose. Rescue aircraft could only carry enough fuel to operate within a range of about 463 kilometers from land. The escape's current location made rescue operations seem impossible and more precarious to keep the sails stable while sailing downwind. The mates were forced to continue increasing the distance between the ship and land. Given the situation, on June 12, rescue organizations quickly devised a plan. A patrol vessel from the Coast Guard off the coast of the northeastern United States. The sailboat escape had over a day's travel with reserve jet fuel. Therefore, instead of heading directly to the distressed sailboat, the patrol vessel would move south. It would serve as a refueling point for the rescue helicopter, thereby reducing the time to reach escape and increasing the chances of saving the crew. The U.S. Coast Guard rescue helicopter took off simultaneously with 2 divers. After rendezvousing with the patrol vessel, the helicopter refueled and then flew straight for escape, carrying hope for those in distress. With each situation update, third mate Mike, Trennan, Atterbury, and Caw were told. They were getting closer to safety, helping the couple maintain faith in a good outcome. Besides monitoring the situation, Mike also used the sail halyard to make another slit for the captain's injured leg. He propped the leg up with a cushion to provide comfort and stability. For Atterbury, Mike also used cushions to secure her position, paying special attention to protecting the neck and head to prevent brain and spinal injuries. Then, he fetched water, covered them with blankets, and began preparing a bag of essential items to bring to the hospital, to be ready for any possible emergency situation. Not only that, Mike also tried his best to keep the couple alert, updating them on the rescue progress and how to steer the boat. Around 2 a.m., taking advantage of a lull in the storm, Mate Chol decided to perform the operation of reefing the mainsail to reduce wind resistance and stabilize the vessel. He crawled from the mast of the sail and tried to secure the mainsail. But unfortunately, the wind pressure was still too great. It got stuck in the boom roller after just 1 meter and could not be reefed further. Chol did not give up. He tried to tighten the remaining sail, minimizing the area exposed to the wind. He then returned to the helm and instructed everyone to brace themselves as he turned the boat into the wind. With the crew's high determination and the engine roaring at full power, the scape turned forcefully, but the boom still moved unpredictably. Undeterred, Chol tied a bowline knot on a rope and waited for the boom to stabilize. He threw the rope over the boom and tried to catch the other end. But at that moment, the scape rode over a wave, and the boom swung far out of reach. Not giving up, Chol again executed a turn with the scape and waited for the next opportunity. Finally, his efforts were rewarded. Right at the moment crossing into June 13th, Chol successfully secured the boom. He tied the rope tightly and brought the boom back to the center position. At 0:30, Chol adjusted the ship's course westward. For the first time in nearly 24 hours of battling the storm, the scape was heading toward land, closing the distance with the rescue team, bringing new hope to everyone. At the same time, Mike continued communicating with the Coast Guard and requested a new heading. Everything was going well until 1 a.m. when the engine began to stall, putting the crew once again in a difficult predicament. But fortunately, Chol spotted a rope trailing behind Escape's propeller. Appearing and disappearing in the swirling water, he quickly shifted the engine to neutral, grabbed a boat hook, and leaned out from the stern to remove the rope. With Mike's cooperation, Chol managed to pull the rope free from the propeller, successfully resolving the urgent problem. Meanwhile, a long-range rescue aircraft, a C-130 Hercules from the U.S. Coast Guard, had approached the scene to establish communication between Escape and the approaching helicopter. Finally, the awaited moment arrived. At exactly 6 a.m., the helicopter arrived and immediately proceeded to drop rescue gear onto the deck along with a professional diver. After receiving initial medical care, Anne-Marie and Caw were hoisted up into the helicopter. However, throughout the transport, the health condition of the two victims showed signs of significant deterioration, despite the crew on the aircraft making every effort to provide emergency treatment and stabilize the situation. John and Mike remained on the yacht Escape. After the helicopter departed, they adjusted the course of the yacht V-300 Dawn to converge with a patrol vessel of the United States Coast Guard. Fortunately, by then it was gradually getting light, the wind had calmed, and the sea was also becoming John went below deck to rest, while Mike continued to steer. They took turns on watch throughout the day, while maintaining communication with the Coast Guard. After a long and challenging journey, the yacht Escape finally met the United States Coast Guard patrol vessel at a location about 648 kilometers from shore. The crew on the patrol vessel quickly implemented safety measures for the Escape and conducted initial health checks for the two mates, John and Mike. However, neither they nor the yacht were in a condition to continue the journey at port, so it was left at sea to bring John and Mike safely ashore. A smaller transport vessel was mobilized to coordinate with the patrol vessel during the evacuation. After about 30 hours of travel, the entire crew docked at the United States Coast Guard facility in Boston to proceed with reporting procedures and work with the investigating authorities. As for the yacht Escape, it was salvaged by a rescue company and taken to Dartmouth Bay, Nova Scotia, Canada not long after. When asked about the reason the mainsail was not hoisted, both mates John and Mike were unable to provide a satisfactory explanation. Only Carl and Anne-Marie knew the truth behind it. Carl was the only one who worked with a mainsail halyard and a throwing system. He could have trained John and Mike, experienced sailors, to manage those positions before the voyage began. This decision was considered reasonable under favorable weather conditions if only the couple had set off together. However, when faced with severe weather conditions and being far from shore, concentrating too much authority in one individual led to serious consequences, causing him and his wife to pay a heavy price. Anne-Marie passed away when the helicopter landed on the United States Coast Guard patrol vessel to refuel. Carl also took his last breath shortly afterward on the way to the hospital by helicopter. Both were confirmed to have died from severe injuries before they could receive emergency treatment at a hospital in Massachusetts. Clearly, severe weather played a significant role in this accident. The heartbreaking incident involving the yacht escape and the couple Carl and Anne-Marie once again reminds us of the devastating power of nature and the importance of thorough preparation before setting out, especially under severe weather conditions. And it also serves as a vivid testament to the courage and relentless efforts of the rescue forces involved in the arduous rescue process. Thank you for listening to this true story. I am Kan Ha. See you in the next episodes. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the Realm of the Unseen channel for some.
If the veil stirred, subscribe and meet the next encounter.